Hey, what's going on guys? Tom Advetich here, and today I wanted to show you a technique that I've been using for many years. It's not like a secret or anything, but it's just something that might not seem like common sense if you have not been doing this for a very long time. So I wanted to kind of pass along my knowledge to you guys. And it's not really so much a piece of gear, even though it is technically a piece of gear. I'll explain. Essentially what this is just a fill card. So it's just a white card and you can cut different sizes and shapes. And I'm gonna show you how I make mine, and I'm gonna show you how I use mine with a tutorial that I'm gonna shoot right here on this desk, because I want to show you guys that you don't need a ton of space like this whole studio, and you can actually do it in a pretty small confined space, assuming that you're shooting something small, obviously. So there's a couple ways that you can approach this. So the way that I recommend is to purchase some foam core, or also known as foam board. This piece is 2 feet by 3 feet, and I got a box of these puppies from Amazon. I think I got like a box of 10 because we kind of go through them pretty quickly on set. We use them for so many different things, but in this case, you probably only need 1 or 2. Elmer's foam board is what they call it at Michael's, or Hobby Lobby, which is a fun name to say. Hobby Lobby, Hobby Lobby, Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby. But yeah, if you get like a 2-pack from them, it'll be about $10, and you can cut it into all different sizes, and I'm going to show you all that in a second. Alternatively, if you don't want to go to a Hobby Lobby or buy them from Amazon, you could just use printer paper if you have that laying around, and it'll do more or less as much as these smaller sizes. But let me explain. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you cut a straight edge. I even used a T-square and a razor blade, and it still isn't perfect, but you want to try to get it as straight as you can. That way when it sits on the surface, it doesn't wobble or tip over on you. So after you have this piece, to bend it in half to get a nice clean fold so that it sits flat, you want to take a T-square or straight edge and just score it, and then snap it in half, and then you have a nice V shape. So there's other shapes that you can make. You can also do something like this, like a U shape, or you can even get crazy with it and do like a rounder shape. That's for more round applications, like if you're shooting, I don't know, like a piece of jewelry or something, you have to wrap all the way around. That sort of technique works really well. But I want to show you the different sizes I got out of one sheet. So I got the small boy, a slightly larger one, this one, which is basically kind of my go-to size. I use this size for general, like, starting point, like a rule of thumb basically. And then a tall boy, which is almost never needed, especially for reflective stuff, because it just kicks way too tall of a highlight, and I'll show you an example when we get into the tutorial. This is good for just kind of filling in a large area and just making a shadow less dense. If you have maybe like something that's not reflective, like a bag or a shoe that's not shiny, that's really a good way to just brighten up a larger item rather than using obviously something smaller. So it all kind of is relative to what you're shooting, of course. There's no fixed rules. There's just different things you want to use depending on what you're shooting. Also, like I said, you can use a sheet of paper. Just any regular printer paper will do. And this I folded in half long ways, and basically you just want to make a tent, and it's kind of about the same size as this bend here. I obviously pre-cut those. I didn't want you to watch me awkwardly cut stuff. I hope you understand. But I'm gonna get this rig. I have this rig set up right at a frame here. I have my 5D SR. That's what we're gonna be shooting tethered to the computer, which is right here. I'm gonna show you Capture 1 live while we're shooting, and then I have my XT3, which is gonna show you a little overhead view so you can see everything I'm doing also in real time. So let's get into it. Okay, so we're gonna start with this dark surface. I wanna shoot some reflective stuff. The reason why I chose this dark surface is because, as you guys probably know by now, white is gonna fill in and black is gonna subtract. So when you have reflective stuff on a dark surface, it's going to reflect the black that it's sitting on. So that's gonna be an even more clear reason why this fill card is going to help illuminate the shadow side. I'm gonna start putting some stuff in the frame now. Let's check out a little bit of live view. So I got the camera on, and I'm gonna press live view. So what this is gonna do is, this is gonna show us in real time what I'm doing, so we don't have to take a ton of pictures. We can kind of loosely frame it up, and you see it's very choppy. It's not exactly, it's not mind-blowing technology, but it is very, very helpful. So I started with the surface askew here because I don't want it to be perfectly straight, because that just feels a little weird to me. So I want to start bringing the items in and kind of see where we land with everything. So I'm actually taking this picture to show my buddy Ian Schoen's pen. He gifted me this beautiful brass pen. He's an awesome dude, and I wanted to show how beautiful this thing is in a picture. So that's what we're gonna do today. So I wanna make sure that this pen is the star of the show. What I wanna do here is get it centered in the frame more or less, and then everything else is going to be a supporting role, if you will. So not the star of the show. So I don't want anything to overpower the pen. And so that means I'm not gonna open this knife all the way. And if you're wondering why I have all this crazy stuff, I have an EDC account that I've had for like 6 years now. It's Notorious EDC on Instagram if you want to check it out. I always kind of forget that it's not really normal to show pocket knives and that people get weirded out by them, so just bear with me. This stuff just looks cool. And I've actually never really been a brass person, but lately I've been getting some brass stuff and I'm kind of into it, so I'm just going with the flow. All right, so let's close live view and see what we get with our first shot. So I have the light not too high, not too low, I guess medium maybe. It's such a subjective thing, but I wanted to have some shadows so you guys can also see some of the shadows getting filled in a little bit. So this might look really odd because there's no context and no framing. So what I want to do here is I want to take the 4:5 crop, and I want to crop way in on this, and we're going to leave it vertical for Instagram. And again, keeping the pen as the center here, I'm going to hold Option and just open it up a little bit. That's still a little too much. I'm actually going to move this flashlight in just a hair, and then I'm going to shoot one more. And first we want to just get our composition before we start messing around with any cards or anything. So I'm going to let me slide this out a little more, because like I said, I want the pen to be the star. So what do we have here? So I'm going to press H so we can see this full screen, and then pull up our grid. And I apologize, I know the grid on the grid looks insane, but what I usually do is I'll just kind of count how many lines are on either side of the top and bottom, so I know it's centered. And then in the middle here, I know 1, 2.5, 1, 2. So I'm going to slide this over just a touch. So now the pen is pretty centered, and I'm happy with that. So I'm going to kill these grid lines, and I think I'm going to get even tighter with the crop, because I want the pen to be even larger in the frame. So I feel like that will do it there. And I'm going to put a little bit more flashlight in this shot. And compositionally, I want to make sure that nothing is really parallel to one another. And right now I feel like we're getting a little parallel with this stuff, so I'm just going to tweak it a little bit. And we'll see what we get here. That feels pretty good. So I'm happy with that, but I don't want to cut the tip of this blade off. So let me go here. See what we get there. Cool, that feels pretty good. I'm gonna push this flashlight out just a little more. And I feel like that's gonna do it. Awesome. All right, I like that. So now what you're seeing is I already have a little contrast and the highlights pulled down because I was testing it before. This light is just catching on top. So I don't really usually do this, but I'm gonna pull this down -80, which is kind of insane, but it's all good. I could also do like a local adjustment, which I'll get into that in a little bit. But for now, I want to leave this. I want to leave this as is. I'm gonna add my fill card, and I want to show you guys what the difference is between the tall one and the shortest one. Already you can see a little bit of a reflection from the pen here because all this stuff is reflective. This material and this material are the same. This is tumbled brass, so it has a different texture than this, this raw brass here. But let me start with the tallest card so you can see why we don't use it, and I think it will be very clear. So I'm going to shoot one more here, and you can see that it fills in so much on this pen and it starts to look nuts. It looks like way too flat and filled in. And the same thing on the flashlight here. I really don't like how that looks. I think it's just a little too crazy. So, if this was the only one you had, you could either cut it or you could just back it way out. But since we have such an array of them, because we've already pre-cut so many, I'm gonna come in with the small boy and show you guys the difference here. So if we look at the difference, the left one is the tall boy and the right one is the small boy. So you can see the difference on the highlight here and on the flashlight. Let me zoom in on that. So you can see a big difference there, as well as on the pen. You can see all these facets were so lit up before and now it's way more minimal. However, I still think it's a little bit much, so I'm gonna actually back this out to the edge of the table and a little bit to the right, and I'm gonna shoot one more, and I wanna show you guys the difference of what just backing it out a couple inches even does. So even there you can see this is like a pretty solid strip of light here, and then on the right side it's got a little more chilled out brightness level to it, and it shows more dimension. So obviously with something like this, you want to show the facets and you want to show the dimension so you can see a little bit more clearly here. I think that looks way better. Honestly, this picture for the most part is pretty much good to go, but I want to take it to the next level, and I'm going to take it beyond this fill card tutorial, and I'm going to give you a little added value. So what I want to do is I want to brighten up the bottom of the pen here. So I'm going to use the tall boy, and I'm going to kick in. If you look at this overhead light here, I'm going to use that to cheat. So if I turn it like this, we should be able to get some light on this metal part down here. And I'm so not a pen guy, so I really don't know what that part's called. Sorry, Ian, don't kill me. But that looks way brighter. It's probably a little bit too bright, so let me see if we can flatten it out a little bit. And then it'll just give it a little dimension without being overpowering. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. I'm really happy with this, but I want to add even more focus to the pen. So what I want to do is I want to add some shadows here, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. I'm going to quickly fly this in, but I'll show this at the end of the video. This is just a black card that's probably about 20 inches long, and I have these blocks taped to the bottom so that this can kind of just stand in place without any issues. I'm going to move my cards out of the way so I can show you this. Actually, before we get into that, let me show you what just some white paper can do instead of these foam core fill cards. And again, these have different names: bounce cards, white cards, fill cards, whatever you want to call them. So this is what it looks like with just printer paper, and it's very similar to what we had before. If we just back this out, this is almost better in this, in some of these cases, I want to say, because you can, well, this one's kind of sliding now, but you can back out each side different amounts versus, having one fixed piece. But for the sake of this video and my personal preference, I just like the way that this looks with the foam core, and it's easier to maintain it's sturdier because it's solid, it's not going anywhere. And let me just move this in so you can just see at the bottom of the frame there. All right, so now we're gonna add the shadows to the top and bottom. So I'm gonna try and keep them a little further away so the shadows aren't so crispy on the edges. I want them to be a little bit feathered off, and we're gonna add one card at a time here. And this card, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna creep it in just a tiny bit more because I want it to be almost on top of that pen. Yeah, that's pretty cool there. And then I'm gonna add one more to the left side, and it's gonna block the light on our white card, but we're gonna tweak that momentarily. So here is the left side, a little too much. So, by the way, let me just see if I can show you guys what's going on here. So now I have the shadow here, like you see in the final picture. And you can see that I turned this because if it's flat, it's gonna block all the light on our fill card. We don't want that. We just wanna create the shadow on the surface, and we also wanna be mindful that it doesn't cast a shadow on our fill card on the side. Like here you can see this is in shadow. So I'm actually gonna back this off. So basically, we have a little shadow here. Cool. All right, there we go. All right, so these are a little too tight. I'm gonna move them away from the pen just a little bit till we get it dialed in. Gonna move it one more crumb. We operate in crumbs and hairs in this studio. 3 crumbs is 1 hair. Don't ask why, I don't know why. It just, just going off a feeling. Okay, cool. Now we're in a good spot because this shadow is not affecting our fill card too much. There's a little section here which you can see, but overall it's fine. And then this fill card is also not getting hit with this shadow either. And then down here is very, very minimally touching our fill card. I'm really happy with how this looks, but I want to add a little something here because it feels a little bit too clean. So what I did was I pulled 2 glasses that I have. We always need some weird reflections and shadow play and stuff like that when we do cosmetic work. And I have these, I bought these for shooting booze, but I end up using it for cosmetic stuff more than anything. So what I'm gonna do is, this is gonna be too strong of a shadow. I don't wanna see those crazy strong X's there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this on top of the other glass so it can elevate it and then back it out. And you can already see it's a little bit more subtle there. And I'm gonna move it down here. And let's see how that goes. So that's pretty cool, but I don't like this tangent of this, this shadow here. So let me slide this back just a little bit. And it looks like the battery in my flashlight died. I'll pick it back up in 1 second. I'll be honest with you guys, I thought the flashlight looked a little dim, so let's see where we're at now. Okay, so I'm just gonna slide this out a little bit. I guess it didn't have to go that far back. Let's see. All right, let me just compare with before. Yeah, it didn't really move too far. Okay, I'm not mad at that. So yeah, so this is looking pretty good to me. I would like to kind of brighten this area up because the shadows do feel a little bit heavy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna paint in an adjustment layer. And if this is over your head and you don't have Capture One or you don't use it this much, it's all good. Don't stress this. I'm just basically painting in this area. Green is my overlay color, and I'm just gonna bump the shadows up a little bit so it's not too heavy. And I'm also going to do this with the shadows here, and you can see them get brighter in real time. It's tricky with shadows and Instagram because everyone looks at their phone at like 20% brightness, which makes me heartbroken every time I see someone's phone so dark because they're just not enjoying the phone the way it could be enjoyed, but it's all good. I understand people are trying to save their batteries and stuff, but it's all right. So anyways, what we're gonna do now is I want to make another adjustment layer because these handles on these knives are a little too bright and they're just bumming me out a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. So I'm going to just paint those puppies, and I'm gonna just darken them up really quickly and easily. Nothing crazy, just a little simple edit. So we'll go over a little bit. Since it's on black, it's all good. So now I'm just gonna go down like 2/10 and saturate it 10, and maybe go down in the mids 0.1, and I'm probably gonna leave that alone. When it comes to doing edits and stuff, less is honestly more. Like, this flashlight is way more rich and saturated than anything else, and I would, you know, again, if I'm gonna get crazy with it, I'm already crossing the line, so I'm just gonna do this. But I'm gonna desaturate this flashlight just a little bit because, again, the pen is the star of the show here. So I'm just gonna go like -20 on the flashlight, and that already looks better to me. It's just way more balanced now. And that's the whole idea of when you're shooting this kind of stuff, or shooting anything for that matter. You wanna have balance in a photo. So one last thing, because this always drives me crazy. The light from this flashlight is very green. So I wanna add some pink to neutralize that and help fix that a little bit. So I'm gonna just take the tint and just make it a little more pink there, and then that feels way more balanced to me there. So that's before and that's after. And I also want to show you guys with nothing on it and no color balance, and then what we have now. And then let's go back to before we even added shadows so you guys can see the comparison. Pretend the flashlight didn't die here. Yeah, I just think it looks really nice with these shadows. It just makes it feel more like, you know, you're sitting by a window rather than you just have one flat light. You want to create dimension and depth, especially with these overhead shots, or as the Pinterest world calls them, flat lays, which really breaks my heart every time I hear that. But yeah, with these overhead shots or flat lays, everything is obviously flat by nature. So when you do something like this, the best way, if you don't have elements to kind of raise things up, like sometimes I'll put like a tin here and I'll have something sitting on it just to give some more height and depth. If everything is on one plane, a nice way to add dimension is by creating these shadows and adding some kind of visual elements. So I think that is the best way to do it. So now we pretty much have a completed picture in my eyes. Now I'm just gonna choose my Instagram recipe up here, and I'm going to confirm that the short edge is at 2000. The destination folder is in my Dropbox, and I'm gonna press Command D to process it out. And that is it. It's so bright, oh my God. Okay, that's better. Get a little fill light going. So that pretty much wraps it up. The only other thing I wanted to show you guys was a couple little bonus tips here. So like I was saying, these cards, these are just black foam core, and honestly, just anything will really do to make a shadow as long as it's rigid and it'll stay when you leave it there. I have these blocks taped to the back, and I don't know, literally years these have been on here. So this is really just like a hero staple in the studio. And let me turn this flashlight off so it doesn't die again. And here are the glasses that I used. I used Crate and Barrel Special. I don't even know, these $5 each or something, but just have them one on top of the other just to make a little height, which is really helpful. One other thing I wanted to mention, if you want to get crazy and experiment, which you should, you can either wrap these sides with aluminum foil, or you can make your own little fill card with aluminum foil by just folding it. Aluminum foil typically has a shinier and more matte side, so you can see what that does. Another technique is to crumple it, smooth it, crumple it, smooth it, do that a few times so that it really gets more matte, and then it'll just have varying degrees of intensity depending on what you're shooting. Again, if you're shooting small shiny stuff or specular reflective stuff, whatever you want to call it. You know, you want to have a little more matte fill card, so it's not just like a mirror bouncing more light into it. You want it to be soft and more finessed. If you're shooting something like a suede shoe or a leather handbag, maybe you want it to have a little more punch, so you want something a little shinier, so that aluminum foil will help for that too. Honestly, you don't need to spend a ton of money to do this. Like I said, it's either just a piece of paper or some foam core or just aluminum foil. Whatever you have laying around will work. Just keep in mind that if you're wearing bright colors, that will also bounce into the clothes, which is usually why I'm wearing dark colors on set, because I don't want to be reflecting bright colors into what we're shooting. So it's a lifestyle, what can I tell you? So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any more questions, if you want to see any more stuff about Capture One or anything else in terms of techniques, etc. in the studio, please drop a comment below. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate your support. Like, subscribe, all that stuff that the YouTube people yell at you to do. Click the bell, whatever. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.